Hello, my name is Jim Garrant, and I am the Relationship Management Lead in the East with Flywire. Previous to this, I was working at several institutions in the Northeast, including LaSalle College, Wheaton College, Wellesley College, and Boston University. Today, I'd like to spend a little time sharing with you how I was able to do some investigation, some background work, and implement a student responsibility statement at Wellesley College. So the issue that I was hoping to resolve was a student financial responsibility statement for our students. And this is when I had my tenure at Wellesley College. And what we were hoping to resolve from this problem was helping to make our students and families aware of our payment policies and any consequences of non-payment. And with non-payment, there was a possibility of resulting in a collection activity. So the inspiration for this was my previous positions, colleagues, and members of the receivables community. Most important was the success that the other schools had found. So we were experiencing some issues with payment, and looking around with our community, we had a very tight-knit community here in the Northeast. I was able to come up with some ideas, and the next step was how we were going to implement them. Part of the Mass Bursars, so I had a large resource to tap into, so I did. Both from the institutions that had been successful to those that were still in the process of trying to implement, and those that were reluctant to even approach the subject based on their prior attempts. Now, interestingly enough, there were a lot more of these than there were that had been successful. Many schools were in the process of doing it, but they were running into some roadblocks. Basically, schools were not in the business of trying to tell people how much they had to pay. You probably can imagine, those of you who have been on some of the orientations or the school tours, the bursar's office is not one of the places that they normally want to bring people to. Financial aid, yes. Admissions, yes. Where you have to make your payment, that's usually one of the last stops if they even have a spot at all. So what we found out was buy-in was the most important key that we needed to try to get a hold of. So I needed to have a goal, and that was a comprehensive semester approach to having the students complete a responsibility statement, and one that can be completed electronically, and that was doable with the current system we had. We certainly wanted it to be self-service, lacking paper, and would not require extensive IT assistance to go live or even to maintain. One of the most important pieces also was storage of that document once it was electronically signed. The objective, pretty clear: reduce the receivable from the onset. So that would be at registration. The students were going to complete that statement, which would let them know by my registration, I acknowledge my charges, etc. And I would be subject to X penalties if I fail to complete a payment by a certain date. So those are just the basics and all the meat that goes inside of there. We wanted it to be a deterrent from incurring a balance or an incentive to resolve any new balance that the student might incur during the semester. And that's why we would refer back to late fees, holds on registration, excluding from the housing lottery. So at the institution that I was at, the housing lottery was one of the most important things that students were interested in participating in every semester. Housing was key. So that was one of the big sticks that we would have to try to have a pinch point for the students. And then tight rules around collection. So in the event that the balance did move to a collection arena, we wanted to make sure that the statement included any rules, policies, things about collection costs, etc., agency placement, that needed to all be included in the statement. So those are some of the hurdles that we had to try to overcome. And then we had to talk about how were we going to implement it. So these are all the things that we had to get in place before we even went to try to get the buy-in. So talking about implementation, we followed a template. As I mentioned, there were some schools who had been successful in moving forward with a statement like this. So we needed to see how they did it. Were they using the same system that we did? And again, who were the stakeholders that they approached to get the buy-in and then moving forward? So we didn't try to get everyone at once. What we did was we approached some of the departments that already knew some of the issues that we were dealing with. We explained to them what we were attempting to accomplish. We got their buy-in, And then as a joint force, we'd move to the next department, and so on and so on. So departments like the admissions office, financial aid, housing, finance, and the last people we approached were the registrar, enrollment services, and then the faculty. So what were the results or the benefits? Well, in my opinion, one of the most important things that I like to have when I'm working somewhere is fairness. What I was experiencing were that there were students and parents who were paying their bills and sometimes going through a little bit of difficulty doing so by the payment due date. And there's a benefit to that, so that when the student arrives on campus, they're just going to move in and they're going to class. So the fairness in everyone having to be held to the same standard, resolving their balance by the due date. And I will mention that one of the reasons I believe that the schools have due dates well prior to the start of classes, so that you avoid any of the difficult situations where somebody hasn't paid their bill and they're there with all of their move-in equipment, all their housing needs, etc., and they can't move in because they haven't paid. So for example, if you have a payment due date August 1 and classes don't start until September, the families that are able to pay by August 1, they have a great August, not worried about anything. And there are families who might take a little bit longer, but they still have a great deal of time, almost a month before they arrive on campus. And then those families that do arrive without having paid, hopefully we've been in touch with them, they're coming to us with a plan. But even if they don't, we're hoping that that population is so small that we will have enough time that they need for us to be with them, those high touch people, so we can spend time with them and try to get them resolved, as opposed to everyone showing up on campus to pay their bill at moving. So effects or results that need to be mentioned. Well, what we found by explaining the situation to other departments around the campus, they had a better understanding of what our office did. You know, many times a bursar's office is considered the bad guy. Well, we don't consider ourselves a bad guy. I mean, I think I'm a pretty nice guy. I'm always willing to help. Once other departments would listen to what we were trying to accomplish, they would observe the steps that we take to avoid issues at move-in, the calls, the emails, the extra effort that we take, the late hours. We actually had an offshoot, knowing that if parents and students were going to be showing up on that last day in attempt to pay, we knew we had to have a way to get payment done immediately. So part of our process was to develop an online payment and real time, so that when they made a payment, it would update their account automatically and the hold could be removed automatically. So in the same vein that a hold could be put on automatically, we could run that process to have them take it off, which would take care of several students instead of just the one that we might be meeting with. So picture a scenario where students are moving in and we have several parents and students who haven't made payment. They come to our office just to clarify what it is that they need to take care of. We let them know where to go, a kiosk in our office or a mobile app. They make their payment. We let them know the process is going to run every hour. Once that's done, you should be able to go back to the dorm and move in. So we're taking care of a lot of people at the same time. So that was one of the offshoots that we were able to, just as a benefit of having the statement, that came as another option for parents and students to complete payment. And again, we don't consider ourselves the bad guy, and the departments that realized that we were taking all these steps actually had a better view of what we do and a better view of us in general. What else did we get out of that? I think we had transparency, being fair. We had a smoother and earlier completion of payments. Again, it gave us more time to spend with those families who really needed all our extra time. So overall, I think having the ability to work with other schools who've done it, the networking, we work with other departments, we had a more cohesive campus, we had a tighter policy. Our third-party vendors had more information about what it is that we were doing before these balances were placed with collections. So the student financial statement of responsibility, I think, is very important. It helps clear up a lot of issues beforehand. I think what we've seen recently is the statements are becoming more comprehensive. One thing that we did in the past was it was one statement with one signature. What you're seeing recently is that there are several statements that the students individually have to check off on. So for example, are they going to allow us to contact them by text? Are they going to allow us to contact them by phone? Do they agree to the late fee policy? Do they agree to the housing policy? Do they agree to the collections policy? Each one of those would be an individual checkbox. And we found that these things are necessary in order for this document to hold up should it go to a collection effort or even litigation. So it's a great benefit. It's a great tool. And for the most part, most students and families understand, and they will complete with their payment on time. But for those that don't, those that you run into an issue with, it's definitely a document worth having and spending the time and effort to get the buy-in from your offices on campus. And the best resource that you have available to you are your colleagues to help you find the easiest way to get it done.